in terms of just getting your feet wet and seeing like who should you go with, I would be looking at your current clients and identifying which ones have the highest like value potential in terms of how much they can pay you and what you guys can do together and how much leverage they have, as well as how much alignment do they have.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. In 2021, studies revealed a concerning statistic. Only 12% of customers believe that a business prioritizes a customer-first approach. This indicates that approximately 88% face challenges in acquiring, retaining, and obtaining referrals from their clients. Nate is on a mission to help entrepreneurs overcome these obstacles by imparting effective strategies. He guides them in attracting their ideal clients, maintaining consistent growth with high-quality customers, identifying and eliminating bottlenecks within their operations, and building a rewarding and customer-focused business. You can benefit from Nate's expertise in cultivating a customer-centric approach to enhance your client relationships, achieve steady growth, and optimize your business operations. So Nate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Looking forward to our discussion. But before I get into any questions I have for you, I'd love for you first to just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, totally. So I kind of knew that I was going to be when I was a kid. I basically had been starting building businesses when I was in like fourth grade. My dad was a computer programmer, and he was building like websites and stuff back then. And so I got really into that and was trying to figure out like, oh, how do we interact with this online kind of market space? And so I was doing that, trying to build websites, trying to figure out how to market and connect people and make money. And then it wasn't until maybe like 2016 that I launched a business on the side, so Morse Consulting, where we were helping businesses use LinkedIn. But once COVID hit, I was in like a big ticket industry, so working with RVs and real estate and automotive. And when COVID hit, all of that basically went on the back burner. So the company I was working for is an intrapreneur, which I would actually suggest trying to do that first if you don't currently have a business, but most of the people on here do. So they're already past that. But yeah, once COVID hit, then that position didn't work out anymore. So then I just went full time on my own thing, and so then here we are years later.
Perfect.
As an entrepreneur.
Well, you use the
like
term
full-time.
intrapreneur, right? Someone may not know exactly what you mean by that. So can you give a definition?
Yeah, so an intrapreneur is like a really unique role. I don't know if a company would even necessarily put that they're looking for an intrapreneur, to be honest, because the amount of autonomy it has. An intrapreneur is essentially where you're coming into a business, acting as an entrepreneur within the business, where you're building businesses under like the main business. They're going to have their umbrella, but then I'm sure, if you were to look at your business and think of like, okay, what are all these other projects of things that I could do? Like a lot of times, you might have a huge list of research and development ideas that you might want to execute, but you might not, be the person. There's a lot of vision thinking within that. So you might bring someone in kind of under you to help build that, but you use the team's resources of people and finances and things like that. And so it's great. That's kind of the definition, but the biggest difference I would say, because it's like 99%, you're almost an entrepreneur, you're almost there. But the biggest thing is going to be that that kind of holds you back per se, or you don't really have until you become a full entrepreneur, is that what I realize is that like the team and stuff, they're going after the vision of the main company. So you don't have that full kind of buy-in on that level. So you're kind of taking a second on things, which is fine. You can totally get a lot of things done. But obviously, if you have your own team, your own mission, everything's really aligned, which alignment seems to be like even more and more important, as this goes on. Yeah, you just have that extra little bit of it, which does seem to multiply things. But yeah.
Perfect.
So that's a little bit more that you maybe wanted, but yeah.
Well, as I say, it's a great way to kind of get your feet wet in terms of becoming an entrepreneur too, because you have the company that's basically over everything and using their resources, but you're able to, learn things and start experimenting and all of that. So thanks for sharing that. I think that's
Yeah.
probably something new to some people. But today, obviously, we're talking about LinkedIn, and a lot of people have probably heard of it and said, yeah, that's just like another platform. And I know it's great if I want to connect with some, business associates instead of just, personal on Facebook or Instagram or, wherever they may be. But can you talk about like how you could actually use it effectively to build your business?
Yeah, 100%. So the first thing would be, how do we look, like alignment wise, how do we look at LinkedIn? And it started as a recruitment kind of platform. So everybody used it as a resume. And that
Hmm.
created this situation where you can target people. If you're in B2B, you can find specifically who you want. If you go on Facebook, not going to work out super well. Twitter's like going to be almost impossible to find a good amount. You're just going to end up with a bunch of crypto people. Obviously, you can still do it, but LinkedIn has this advantage where you can really find like who's active right now and specifically like who do you want to talk to. And then also think of it as like networking. You can actually put a note in and tell them the intention of why you're reaching out versus,
Hmm.
you can't really do that with any other platform. So that's, I think a lot of people still think of it as that resume building side for just like recruitment. But yeah, you can really find who you want. So I would say how to use it would be to first know that just thinking about it in that way can make you stand out. Because if, for example,
Hmm.
like looking at your profile, a lot of people just list it as a resume. But if you think about it, the people that are visiting, they're on a buyer's journey and they have two things. They have the like tangible actions they need to take, and then there's the like intangible things that they need to learn. And so if they're visiting your profile, because LinkedIn likes to put their content, make it so it shows up on Google, and then people are searching for you as well, because it's turning into more of like a business networking platform. You want to make sure that your profile is having things that are relevant for them so that they can either become a lead or engage with you in some way. Otherwise, they're just going to go on your profile and then leave. So that's like
Hmm.
a big step, I guess, that they could take in addition to kind of understanding the difference. But yeah, really think about how do you use the platform to nurture people that are in the journey right now. And I say this where, let's say if you're competing on positioning, then you're saying, hey, here's the reasons that you should buy for us, right? But what I say is like, I like to compete with my competitors based on proximity. So finding the people on LinkedIn who are in the market right now, because then we can be the guide for them and make them the hero of their own journey. And if you're looking for better clients, which usually people come to me because they're like, hey, we have clients, but some of them are better than others. And so, how do we get more of these better clients? Because they give us good referrals and help us develop our service and whatnot. And so the people that are working in these larger companies, they're not going to, if you're the owner of a business, you're way more ambitious about like challenging the status quo. But if
Hmm.
you're an employee at a company, you're actually more concerned about keeping your job. So they take a different approach. So really being that guide, helping them in the journey, makes a huge difference if you're trying to go for like larger companies to get some like whale clients per se.
Right. Perfect. So then how do you maybe even find people you want to connect with? Because there's obviously so many people on there, and LinkedIn obviously can recommend, to you, and then people can find you and they'll reach out. But if you're specifically wanting to find someone who is like your target, you want to start building a relationship, because of course we know, don't just start selling, right? Because people are just going to tune you out then, right? But start
Yeah.
building those relationships. Like, what would you say to someone who says, well, I'm not quite sure really how to use it effectively? What do I do?
Yeah. So what you want to do is the first step, which a lot of people don't really consider this, but the first step is instead of taking like, hey, here's who we've worked with so far and here's what we want to say, ideally the first step is actually doing some market research. So using like Sales Navigator, and we have some trainings on this. We're using like Sales Navigator and things like that to go and find within all those people that you can work with, your market, where do you find the groups that are the most active and needing your service the most right now? And so you want to you want to do that market research to find who you should align to. So that's that's the real answer of having deeper strategy, of actually doing it better. But yeah, in terms of just getting your feet wet and seeing like who should you go with, I would be looking at your current clients and identifying which ones have the highest like value potential in terms of how much they can pay you and what you guys can do together and how much leverage they have, as well as how much alignment do they have. So do they align with your values or not? And then looking at those, try to find patterns with them, and then go out and look for them and optimize your like your profile and things like that for them. But yeah, that first step of really getting super clear on who you want to talk to makes the rest of it much easier, because then you'll know more of what to say. You'll know more of who specifically they are. And with Sales Navigator, and there's other tools out there that have databases that show, who's on LinkedIn as well. You can search differently, but that should give you a good initial jumping off point to find people, because there's a ton of filters in Sales Navigator.
Well, that was going to be a question I had too. Like, do you just say like, I'm looking for like someone in this like income bracket or this industry or this area? Like, how do you actually put in the data that would give you some results in Sales Navigator to make it worthwhile for you?
Yeah. So you can put a lot of those things in. Some of them, like for example, the income isn't so much there. There's other ones that you can use. Like we have a partnership with like a credit bureau company, so we have data from that. But on Sales Navigator, they don't have that. What you'll have to do if you want to find like income brackets is look for like locations are good, like geolocations, right? Like I'm in Franklin, Tennessee, so it's a pretty good income here. So that's like you can do that, but also look at like what roles and titles are they in and how much do they make. Or if you're looking for companies, then you could look at like, okay, how big is the company, right? What are those indicators that are going to show that most likely they're in that tier that you're looking for? And then you can also, super important, but they have Sales Navigator has an option where you can see like who is active in the last 30 days. So that's going to give you quicker results if you go after the people that are active right now versus those that are potentially just using it as a resume and then not really using it.
Right. So obviously it is for business more than personal, where a lot of other, platforms are personal. But I have seen more now where people are posting some personal things, whether, maybe some challenges they're facing or some celebrations that they're having too. And so what would you say about like the type of content we should be sharing? How much should be business? Maybe how much should we be sharing personally so people can see who we are as individuals? Like, what is that balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. And especially going into 2024, there's a big emphasis on content. Like LinkedIn is wanting people to do content right now. They're, having celebrities go and post content and making a big deal about that. And in around 2021, I think that's where I started to notice that they were moving in that direction, which is good. And it's going to be an interesting challenge for them because a lot of these higher level people that you're going for, they might not doom scroll, right? And so seeing your content, it might not get as many people as you think, but I do get on calls, and LinkedIn has a lot of lurkers, so you get less engagement than usual, especially if you're going for bigger companies. There's this weird phenomenon where, like, let's say you're talking to, some C-suite employee at a company, they might not engage, maybe not C-suite, but maybe a director or something. They might not engage in content because they think that if their company sees them engaging in content, then they're looking for jobs. Right. So the engagement itself isn't something to focus super hard on, but the content does nurture. And if people are on there, they're going to see that. Even if they're going in to see, answer a message, they might, not have newsfeed eradicator on or something and see everything, or see the post going through the feed. But yeah, in terms of what to post, definitely more business focused since it's a B2B platform, but I think it's business focused with a personal twist. I think that you can totally, put a post that's like, hey, do you have let me see your mascot, and then you show your dog or something like that, like if Max was here, but he's in the other room. And so, that would work. But really what I see work is on the personal side more is like stories. So they're giving their personal take on something that happened, and that storytelling seems to work really well. And then the algorithm also seems to really favor like lives and carousels as well. Also the newsletters. The newsletters are probably the most underused thing because all of the newsletter subscribers get notification when you post an article, as well as they get an email from LinkedIn with everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like kind of where people should be moving people to, is subscribers on that, and then sending them to their website or whatever. But yeah, on the personal side, storytelling is going to be the best one.
Perfect. So then how do you become kind of that trusted guide where people are following you and then you are attracting those perfect fit clients? Like, again, we talked content is important, but what is like the type of content that people should be sharing? I mean, again, you said carousels are great, lives, but really in terms of the messaging, like what do you recommend?
Yeah, because that's more of the medium per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for the actual content itself, I would be thinking about what are the things that when I tell someone else, they're like, oh, like that's interesting. Tell me more. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
even use the content to test those ideas and see which one works, then imagine, you have like, because that's how you become a thought leader, right? Is you kind of like are giving
Right.
them something that kind of cracks open their current way of thinking, and then, stuff grows through there. And so going back to the profile, think about it. If they're just looking and seeing like, okay, is this just telling you why they should buy from you? Right. But if they're not ready to buy from you, then they're going to go look for a guide, someone else. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to have content on there that allows them to engage with you and build a relationship early in the journey before they're like ready to buy. Because if you're just
Mm-hmm.
waiting until they're ready to buy, they're going through the journey on their own. Right. So you could have different
Right.
opt-ins, you could have different content. Your content could, be helping them think differently. And then maybe there's like a CTA at the end or some additional resource that, is longer form, because it's difficult to get a real transformation in someone with like a short form piece of content. But short form
Mm-hmm.
content is great at making someone like stop and think. And then if you make them go like, and they're like, oh, tell me more, that's the perfect time for them to actually check out like deeper pieces of content that go into that
Mm-hmm.
like topic.
Perfect. So, as I said earlier, too, a lot of times people will just try to connect and then sell right away, right? Which is a big turnoff to most of us, unless you're really at that point where you need something and it shows up right away, So, can you talk to the person who's listening about how they can actually build meaningful relationships that don't turn people off in terms of like, I get 20 people a month reaching out to say they could be my digital creator or whatever, like how do we do that where we truly are building meaningful relationships and not just trying to sell?
Yeah. And yeah, that's totally a phenomenon that goes on, because it's hard because people think, because it's like what they're really doing, if we put it into like a real world relationship thing, it's like as if they're approaching their ideal client or whatever, and the first thing out of their mouth is like, hey, here's all the reasons that we should get married, right? And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. You guys could be a good fit. You guys could be the best fit ever, but it's probably
Mm-hmm.
not going to happen in that way because you didn't build the rapport. There's no like relationship there, and they're going to be like, you don't even know me, So I think that yields some light on it. And so really it's going to be more about, okay, how do we casually come in the conversation and like let them open up, but be there as the expert. So it might be that, maybe you noticed that they engaged with like a competitor's content and they were like commenting about something, that's a pretty good opportunity. And most likely that competitor isn't actually engaging back with the audience like that. So you already know like where they're at. And so it's better to actually ask them questions to the point where you can tell that they feel like you really understand them, because at that point that's when your words matter, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can propose getting on a call to tell them more ideas, or sending them stuff, or just progressing it. You can take more steps in the sales process there, but they kind of need to be like comfortable in the buyer's process before you can like push them, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Which you don't want to
Right.
push them, but you know what I mean, trying to escalate
Exactly.
it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I find just for me, I just have where I've met some people, and when you first connect, often they show up, in your feed and they'll be sharing something. And I like to just put a little comment on something. Or if I know someone who needs a service, and I've met someone who is like, oh, they might be a great connection, then I can introduce them, right? And to me, that's actually building meaningful relationships. They might be doing the same for me. And it's like we're showing that we actually care about them as a person as well as just, a connection that might get us something, And so I can't spend a lot of time, chatting with people or commenting all the time, but there are certain people that I like to engage with and really be able to just start build that relationship, and maybe it will turn into something in the future, maybe it won't, and maybe we'll just have like that relationship that we've built. But I think that's for me like what I have to do, because I don't want to be trying to network. It's just like going to a networking meeting in person. I'd rather talk with one or two people than try to like work the room, right? So what would you say about that again too, like how to maybe really connect with certain people through their posts and content?
Yeah. And so you want to connect. If that room was full of all like ideal people, though, then you'd probably want to work the room, right? So you're saying that like some of those people. So as long as you're adding the right people to your connections, which are going to be like your audience for content and people that you can engage with, then you should want to work the room that part. So a lot of that is really just making sure you're talking to the right people and being really intentional with who you're, which goes back to the beginning about having like a deeper strategy of who you're going after. Because then you'll want to talk to everybody if everybody's super high potential and an ideal client, right? And for the comment side, a way to make that a little bit easier is the people that are your ideal clients that you actually do want to talk to, make a list of them. And then whenever you have your block a day where you're going through organic and LinkedIn, whatever, then go through like their profiles and engage with content that they've recently posted. So then you can add value back to them, and that'll make it so you're not just going through the feed, doom scrolling, commenting, totally agree on everything or whatever.
Right. Well, there's always got to be a strategy behind everything too, and we're not always as well versed in what we should be doing and how to create that strategy. So do you have any tips on like what that strategy should be and what type of things that we could include in that strategy to have a better result and, in the long run become more successful?
Yeah, definitely. So that initial research of finding and getting focused targeting of like who should we go after, that's going to be get that down. The next thing is create, I call them like playbooks. So start to create the messaging of like what would you send, because then you can either have like someone on your team or you can just like copy and paste easier, or even if it's like a structure and you're swapping out certain things, or there's like a lot of automation tools out there, which I'm fine with. Just make sure that that's not like the strategy is that it's automation. That's more of just something to handle the queue for you. And then also the other part would be like, as you're going throughout that, have a way to test things. So instead of just like being blindfolded and just throwing darts all over the board, how do you make sure that you're going from like guesswork to growth by having a process to test different ideas? So that's a big part. Trying not to be too overcomplicated on that, but having like a really good testing process is going to help you optimize, because there aren't really great marketers. There's only like really good testers that are actually testing the process. So yeah, actually having testing and doing research and looking for patterns and things like that is actually a large part of the strategy. Yeah. So
do you want to talk about how they would test what they're doing to make sure it's giving them the results?
Yeah. So you're going to want to, when you think of an idea that you want to test, it's not just the idea. What you're actually wanting to test is the hypothesis. So it's like, if this happens, then that happens, and what's the principle within that? And make a list of the different ideas that you have, because over time you're going to be like, oh, this person said this, or I saw this piece of content, maybe I should say this thing, maybe I should maybe I should go into LinkedIn groups and find people in there, because it doesn't go again, like it doesn't, because with LinkedIn you can only send like 150 connection requests a week, around there, but in groups that you can send them messages without needing it. So it's like a little different thing. So you can go with more. But anyways, so that could be a potential idea. And so when you have all your ideas there, you want to score them on like how much effort they're going to take, how much does it cost, and how much like impact. And then that's going to let you see them relative to each other. And then you want to go, okay, for each of these tests, what's like the smallest amount of tests? What's the MVP, the minimum viable product? So it might be like, maybe we test this audience against the other, and we go to 200 of each, and we see like what's the result with that. And so that allows you to make sure that you're not, testing forever. You're basically noticing like, okay, when's the soonest that we can shift to the next one? And then you have this you can create a tempo of testing at that point, and then the data will feed back, because tests that work or don't work usually give ideas of like new things to test as well. And so now you can create like a system of testing on there. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yes. I mean, there's just a lot that goes into all of that, it seems, but at least the idea of kind of what to.
I was like, oh man,
right?
that's a dense question.
Right. But at least you kind of gave an overview of like what could be happening. And then, as they, like you said, you try one thing and then maybe it makes you think of something else that you could try and, just see what happens. So, but is there any final takeaway maybe on this topic that you want to share with our listeners that maybe I didn't know to ask?
Yeah. So I would say that paying attention to how we're talking about this outreach here, and then also the content, they kind of like tie in together. So the people that are coming in, you want to make sure that you're nurturing them, because you're basically providing content so that they can control the buyer's journey, and then you have your sales process in addition. So I'd be taking a look at it of like, okay, as they're going through these stages, what are they learning? And then as I'm going through in my sales process, like how am I connecting with them at each stage, and making sure that there's no areas that have leaks in them where they have to go and find your competitors in order to progress on the buyer's journey.
Perfect. Well, I would like to ask if you have any offer that you would like to share with our listeners, and if they want to connect with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a lot of what we spoke about in what's called Outreach Accelerator. And so that's where our team works directly with you to make sure that all the nuances are figured out. So it's not like a course where someone's just going through and then like there's a ton of nuances and then you don't get the results that you want. This is where we work directly with you at all the stages to make sure everything's perfect. So you can go to natemorse.com and you can connect with me on there, book a call on there, or go to, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you're just looking for some like initial resources to kind of get your feet wet, you can go to natemorse.com/gift. Morse like Morse code, even though my name's probably around this. And on there you'll have I have an Amazon bestseller, the LinkedIn High Ticket Handbook, that's on there, LinkedIn Group Navigator, Prospect Primer. There's a bunch of different resources on there that are good starting points as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Nate, for being a guest on my show and talking on this topic and helping our listeners learn more about how to effectively use LinkedIn. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.